Hi there everyone, welcome back to part 2 of the Maven Power Challenge, Deep Clean in Power Query. In the previous part 1, if you've missed it, we have created this main table along with some subtables for NERC region, area and event type. So this one's going to be slightly shorter. I'm going to focus on the area and identifying the state for each incident that's happened, and then also look at the NERC region as well. So we'll jump into our Power Query. This is our full table that we created previously, and then we have a state table, which is the index from our full table, and then the corresponding area that's been affected, whether that's a town, state, or region of the United States and North America. We also have the event table and then a NERC region table. So what I want to do is focus on basically identifying which state. So I'm just going to look at a state level rather than a town or a county. I think for these purposes, state's probably going to be good enough. And I'm going to look at two different methods. The first method will be to use like a merge. So I have this list of US states and territories. Now it's important to include territories as well, because you'll find that there are some instances in places like Puerto Rico that are in here, and if it's not classified as a state, so it's important to have them all in here. So we got 56 rows instead of the 50 states. So I just downloaded this from Wikipedia, and you can use this. So what I'm going to do, as I say, two methods. One is to merge this table with our indexed list, and the other will be something a little bit smarter that I think works a bit better, but it's just a few more steps and a little bit more code to write. So in this one, if we want to do the very quick one, which is the first, which is a merge, what we can just do is select here merge queries, and we can select our table merge plus our state names. So if we go area affected and state, and what we need to do is click on this button for use fuzzy matching to perform the merge. So the fuzzy matching will look up and find like close matching, sort of identify close matching strings. So for example, Oklahoma would match with Oklahoma, but maybe metropolitan Kansas City area, it might identify Kansas, but it depends. It's got different levels of sort of thresholds. So here we have, so if you see here, it says the selection matches 1047 out of 3947. That's not great in my eyes, but it's got if you read this on the Power Query, it says this is it looks at how similar two values are to each other. The minimum is 0, which means that there's not going to be any level of similarity, and the maximum is 1. So the default here is 0.8. So if you want to maybe try and match a bit more, you can drop it down. So maybe if it's like 0.65, sorry, not 0.65, it'll re-estimate it here. So you see now we've got just under 3,000 rows from the first table. Again, maybe if I try it one more time, and we'll just see what this brings. Okay, so you've got 3,399. I think that's about as far as I would go. I think if we go below that, you might get some erroneous results. So if I hit OK here, and we'll let this process, it might take a couple of seconds. So it gives us a merge, because it's merged two tables, then we can just select the state. And we get our kind of results. So we get, it's picking up here Oklahoma. Here it's picking up Kansas, but you'll see here there's a bit of an erroneous value. It's picking up Arkansas and Kansas. So it's because we got that sort of fuzzy matching, it's kind of picking up sort of erroneous answers in some locations, but the majority of them will be picking up the correct answer. You'll get some instances here in Wise, New York. You might, if you wanted to pick this up, you might need to run this again using the abbreviation, state abbreviation. So you can do that if that's something that you want to do. It's the same process again. Just very briefly, I'll just run down just to see. You'll see by and large, it's picking up. So here where we have Ohio and Indiana for this event number 39, this is what we wanted to do. So if we're in two different states, parts of Ohio and parts of Indiana, you want to pick up both Ohio and Indiana. You'll see here northern, central, and eastern Virginia. It hasn't picked up anything because it might have been a bit confused between sort of West Virginia and Virginia. But yeah, so I think it's probably okay for a first pass, but I think if you want to get something a little bit more, like here, for example, Florida counties, it didn't pick up Florida for some reason. It's not picking up here. So it can be a little bit hit and miss. If you want to get it a bit more accurate, you could keep that number up, the fuzziness factor, but it's probably a balance of what's going to give you the best result. Okay, so that's one. That was one potential solution. So I'll look at the second one, which is a bit better in my opinion. Okay, for this one, for state names, I'm just going to use states here. So what I do is I go to states and I go to transform. Sorry, I want to duplicate this. Sorry, so I can go here and right click and say add as a new query. And it's going to give me a state. I'm going to call this a state list. So this is our state list. And then what I want to do is to go back to my state table. And then click here and go to add column and hit custom column. And we'll call this state list. And what we do here is we just type in state list. So this is going to reference this list here. So we're just calling out that list. So you'll see there within the list, that's what it's showing. And then what this is going to do is then append a new column. And within each row, there's going to be the full list of those states. So we'll see when that loads just in a couple of seconds. Okay, so we have the state list, and if I click in here, and I bring this up a little bit, you'll see this, each list has a full, it's only showing the top, the first couple of values, but this is the full list of the US states included in here, so there's a full list in here. And what we want to do now is we click on this expand button, and we, instead of extract values, we say expand to new rows. There's a bit of a word of caution here, in that this is going to create for the first index for Oklahoma. It's then going to duplicate Oklahoma for one row for each state. So there's going to be whatever that was, 59 states. So if you've got 3,000 line items here, so it's 3,000 times 50. So you're going to have 150,000 line items created for this purpose. So if you have a large data set and you do this on it, it might create some issues. But if it's relatively small, like a couple hundred or a few thousand line items, this is something that I think any computer can really handle. Okay, so that's basically what I was saying there. So for index 0 for Oklahoma, it's got then every state has been assigned it, and what we're going to do is going to basically match where there's a match. We're going to return a true. So that's basically the premise of this technique. And then what we're going to do now is then add another column. So this custom column, we'll call this state match. And what we're going to say is text contains, and then open brackets. And then what we want is the area affected, and then comma, and then state list. So what this is going to say is find whatever's in the state list inside the area affected. And it's returning a true false. So it's a match. So if we go down here, we find our true. Let's go to Oklahoma. It's true. Everything else is false. If we move down here again, we find true. It's Kansas. You'll notice that it wasn't picking up Arkansas, which we were picking up before. So it's a little bit more accurate in terms of picking up exact matches. Let's see if we pick up Missouri here again. Yeah. So, and then what we just want to do here is we filter by true. And this will give us then a consolidated list with our index, the area affected, the equivalent state. So there we go for our first couple of instances. We got Oklahoma, Michigan picking up that. Maybe if we look at some central coastal areas of southern Louisiana, picking that up. Let's see, if we look further down here, 47, it's got Michigan and Ohio. It's picking up both Michigan and Ohio there. New Jersey and Pennsylvania is being picked up. So where we have multiple states within one incident, it's picking those up. So generally I prefer this method because you're not sort of held to this fuzziness factor, which is a little bit hard to gauge. You're actually looking for sort of exact text and extracting it. So that's my preferred method to identify the states. So you should be able to use this to count, the number of states or number of incidences that are happening within states in your analysis. As I said, if you wanted to pick up some of the abbreviations and things like that, you could do the same technique again and apply it for the abbreviations and see what you pick up, and you could probably append it to your state table if there are particular index items that only have that sort of state abbreviation. And what you can do here is, if you don't want to keep this true, you can remove that. So you've got your clean area affected and the equivalent state. You might want to change this to text, and that should be that done in terms of being able to do your analysis. So maybe some of the caveats I would think on this are that I'm not sure if there might be some spelling mistakes, because if RE and RF might be close, I don't know if they're the same, or RE and REC. So it's probably worth considering about whether there are some duplicate items in here or ones that sort of have typos, but it's a little bit difficult to sort of verify that at the minute. I tried to do a little bit of research to see if I could find a list that gave us all of these different regions. I could only pick up maybe 6 or 7. I think there are 6 regions shown here in the States, and then there are sort of interconnecting lines and things like that, and there might be some historic ones. So it's actually quite difficult to find information on each of these to give you kind of a... Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually just create a helper column, just adding a column to remove that sort of punctuation. So just call this NERC clean for the time being. And we'll just say text remove NERC region, and then what we want to remove will be you want to remove commas, we want to remove semicolons, and then we want to remove forward slashes. So this is just going to assess this column, look for any row that contains these, and then just remove it. Okay, so we have that sort of cleaned up. So we got no more punctuation in here. I think the other thing I have to do is for the NAs, and then I think for this one, Midwest ISO, and then I think this is in parentheses RFC. I'm just going to keep RFC for that, so I'm going to get rid of this Midwest ISO. So I'm just going to do a quick replace on both of these. This with null. And that should be yes for this one. Okay. So what we want to do here is then, because we got spaces between the different regions, what we can do is just split this by delimiter. So where we have FRCCC and SERC, we want to split it by delimiter, so we get both of these as we discussed. So all I need to do here is select the column, and we go to transform, and we split the column by delimiter. And instead of comma, we use space, and then we click on advanced options, because this we just split the column and you would get a column. But if we go to advanced options, we can select rows. So it's gonna split everything into a new row, and then we hit OK on that. Okay, so that's done now. Let's just take a quick look at some of the ones where we had multiples, just to see that it's actually worked. So if I pick one or two of these and hit OK, we'll just see what they look like. So you'll see here for incident 2206 we had SPP and RE, so we have both regions being highlighted just for that incident. It's the same if we go down for SERC and MRO for this particular incident. So we got both being covered here. So our what we were looking for is kind of worked. So I'm happy with that result. So I'll just remove that filter. And that's us done for the NERC. Now you can either remove this column if you don't want it anymore and rename this, but I'll leave that up to you, whatever you want to decide. But so we'll move on to our next topic. Okay, so next I'm going to look at alert criteria. Now in the package of documents that you get with from Maven, there was a couple of PDF documents in it, and if you actually go in and read or have a look at them, there's one in here that it's called Schedule 1 Alert Criteria, and it's got the sort of details of each alert criteria and what category it falls under. So it's kind of when it's supposed to be filed, so when is the documentation supposed to be filed. So they've got these categories 1 to 8, needs to be filed within 1 hour, so it's called emergency alert. A normal alert, there's 4 categories here from 9 to 12. It's called a normal report, needs to be filed within 6 hours. And then there's another category of whatever that is, maybe almost 10 categories for a system report I think is probably not as serious, and these need to be filed within 1 business day. And I think in general, these are the sort of classifications that are being used in the files that we've been given. So what I've actually done is taken that table and got the numbers 1 to 24, the criteria text, and put it in there. And then I created a column. I just did this in Excel, so just copied from the PDF, put it in the Excel table, and then for the alert type, put in emergency, normal, and system. So I think this alert type, just having the 3 categories, it might be a good one for your analysis, because having 24 categories is quite detailed. But I think if you have these as a higher level category, and then potentially you could drill down, if it was emergency, you could see which is, which emergencies happening most often or something like that. So what I'm going to do is just merge this with my main full table just on the alert criteria, because you're probably going to get a sort of a tidied up version of the criteria along with the alert type. Okay, so I'm just going to do that now. So if we go to the full table, take alert criteria, we go to home, we merge our criteria, and we take alert criteria, and we take alert criteria. I think we need to use fuzzy, because I think some of the wording might be slightly different, or there might be some sort of typos. I think it'll be difficult. I don't really have time to go through and adjust all the typos to make them match here. So what I'm hoping is that Power Query will be able to match these up in a suitable way. So we've got 2,128. I'm going to actually accept that, because I know that for the first, if you remember, for the first number of years, like the first 10 years, there were no alert criteria on it. So we only have maybe in the region of half of our, or maybe just more than half of our data we'll have. So that seems about right. Okay. So I'm actually going to take all of these, because what what I think might be benefit, you might not need the criteria, because you could use this as a lookup. So you could have like a reference table, and you could have the detail for criteria. You might just want to have the number and the alert type, something like that. But for this instance, I'm just going to keep it here and just expand all of them. All right. So as expected, for the first number of years, there isn't any alert criteria. Actually, it might just be easier to filter. Okay, so we have a quick look at the alert criteria. We'll see that there is some matches, but there are a number of nulls shown here, and we got like suspected physical attack. And if I look at we have physical attack. So I think maybe the fuzzy logic does need to be slightly adjusted. Because I think it's probably maybe a bit too strict. So what I might go and do is go back and adjust this, and I'll do a very small bit of trial and error, and I'll just pause it just until I get a reasonable result, and then I'll come back and tell you what it is. Okay, so even if I bring the fuzzy logic threshold down to 0.35, which is quite low, it's still not picking up suspected physical attack. So where we have this physical attack that causes major interruptions, and we have number 9 as a physical attack. It appears because there isn't sufficient information here to differentiate between some of those. It's not picking any. If we do go down to like 0.2, it does pick up suspected physical attack, but it kind of iterates between the different options from this table, either number 1 or number 9, or even number 15 and 16 physical threats, etc. So it's not that accurate, and it also comes at the detriment of other categories. They start getting a little bit weird as well. So I think for the purpose of trying to keep the others accurate, I would say keep the fuzzy logic threshold up quite a bit, so even at 0.5, to keep the other ones more accurate. So this is where the fuzzy logic is 0.5, so you'll see that for the first couple, like public appeal, it's matching up. Loss of electric service to more than 50,000 customers, it's sort of matching up here. System-wide voltage reductions is being picked up, public appeal. Again, if we keep scrolling down, it looks like it's picking up, generally it's picking up the alert criteria. It seems to be that the only one that it's not picking up is this sort of suspected physical attack. There are maybe a couple of options. You could either do some sort of a logic where you say, if this equals suspected physical attack and this is null, then replace this text with suspected physical attack, something like that. But you're not going to get an accurate allocation of an alert type, because you've got physical attack is an emergency, you got physical attack that's normal, and you've also got like these physical threats which are system. So that might be one of the caveats. If you're taking part in this challenge, that might be one of the caveats, that you're unable to allocate the alert criteria for suspected physical attacks, because you're unable to sort of assign whether it's an emergency, etc. Or you can make your own sort of judgment call. But for my purposes, I would leave them as is, because it's difficult to, as I say, it's difficult to ascertain exactly what it is. You don't want to be misleading and say these are all emergency cases, where they may not be. Okay, so for the event type, this is maybe a little bit more of a tricky one, because we have lots of different types of events, and they look to be a bit difficult to try and classify easily. Again, if you look at some of the documentation, they talk about the type of emergency and the cause. And I think I said earlier that if you look at these categories of physical attack and vandalism, theft, cyber events, etc., and weather, they seem to line up quite well with what we have. So what I've kind of done is it's like an initial first pass, is try and look at some words that may be associated with sort of weather events or physical attacks or cyber. So weather, we could have weather, storm, wind, hurricane, etc. Failure at substation or switchyard, one substation, switchyard, and maybe one or two others. So I think if you have the sort of prompt words, what I have done, I'll not go through it because there's quite a bit of writing in it, but the first thing I wanted to do here was, on the event type, was to make them all uppercase. So to make them all uppercase, you just go to transform, format, and click uppercase. And then the next thing I wanted to do here was adding a custom column. I'll open this up here, but I'll maybe open it up in the editor, just to make it easier to look at. So if we look at this inside, because text contains, you might want to do like a text contains and maybe look at event type and see if it contains storm, then return weather. And that's fine because you've only got one word or one string to compare against, but text contains doesn't allow multiple strings, so there has to be a bit of a workaround. This happens to work. You have a list transform, and then you can have a list of words or phrases or text strings, and then comma with substring, and then you create this sort of function to say if the event type contains that substring, so something from here, then we will return weather. So that's, and then that gives us like a true or false. And then what we want to do is we wrap this in a list.anyTrue. So if there's anything within this that's true, then it will return a true. So if this is listing any true, that's sort of like a yes. So if it's true, then weather. And that's kind of what's going on here. So, and then we can employ multiple iterations of this. So we have if it contains storm, fire, tornado, hurricane, weather, flood, depression, lightning, wind, etc., then we want to return weather. And then the next one, if it contains physical, then we're going to return a physical attack, cyber attack. I'll maybe open it here. It's easier to look in the advanced editor. So this is kind of all of these types of causes. I've kind of tried to list out as many as possible. So as we say, for the weather, we have them all listed up here. For physical attack, cyber attack, fuel supply emergencies, generator loss. If we look at transmission, fault, or tripping, we can look at sort of transmission equipment failure. If we look at substation, switch yard, space station, switch space yard, failure at substation or switch yard. And then again for operator actions, vandalism, theft or stolen is theft, and then suspicious is suspicious activity. Else, I'm just returning then as a catch-all, other or unknown. Now if you wanted to add in additional categories in here, there might be something like some of the actions taken. Sometimes there's like a public appeal or load shedding or something like that. You could add those in here, so you can just keep adding additional conditions. And then what that's kind of returned here for me, this added conditional. So if you look here, we got ice storm, it's a weather issue, severe weather is weather, vandalism, fire is weather. Interruption of firm power, you could maybe consider this to be something related to transmission equipment failure, but you might want to review some of these where they're unknown and maybe attribute some of the words to one of the categories, maybe on review. Again, we're picking up lots of weather related items. Transmission equipment, it's transmission equipment failure, unknowns, there's unknowns. But yeah, so that's kind of my method for trying to classify or categorize the event types into a sort of a smaller number. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We've got 11 categories instead of, hundreds of different types of event types. We've kind of classified them down, and I think if we select, we see the sort of rough approximate breakdown. And if I select looking at the entire data set, so if we look at the distribution of this event category, so we've got 43% attributed to weather, you got vandalism, physical attack, transmission failure, etc. There's quite a lot of unknowns. So there's about 20%. So it might be an idea, if you were looking at this in a bit more detail, to go back and maybe look to see if you can either it's a new category, or you want to reassign like some of this interruption and firm power if that's considered a transmission equipment failure. You might want to put in something like firm power or interruption associated with transmission equipment failure, and you might get more of these sort of unknowns assigned. Okay, so in terms of where we are to date, we have our full table, which has our dates and times for events beginning and restoring. We have our alert criteria and alert types assigned. There are some issues that you might want to highlight if you are proposing to present this, if you're not able to match some of these up to criteria. If you're using this technique, of course, feel free to use your own technique, but if you are doing that, then I would advise looking at some of these issues and maybe highlighting them in your assessment. We also have the state table. Again, there might be some minor issues where we're not picking up because either a state is not mentioned or it's the state abbreviation that we haven't picked up. The event type we've just looked at, that's being sort of categorized. Again, you may wish to add additional keywords in here to pick up the different categories, or else add your own additional categories on. And then we have our region. So we've done all of that to date. The only thing that's outstanding, I think, is the demand loss and the number of customers affected. Unfortunately, I'll maybe have to leave that to another video. I'll try and make a very, very short one looking at this, maybe in the next day or so. So thanks again for joining us. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.